morning, everyone. Good morning again. Paul, just so you know, I'm also Thursday born, and Togo and Ghana being the same. My name is Yawa, so you have Yo and Yawa here. So thank you so much for joining us today. We are extremely honored to be in your company. Even more honored that Jack Dorsey agreed to join us at the Africa Bitcoin Conference and made it happen. So a round of applause for him and his team. Jack, the reputation that comes with your name usually leads automatically to Twitter, because you are one of the co-founders of Twitter and you led that company for many years. Then eventually you diversified and moved from Twitter, and now you're very much into fintech world, and you lead a conglomerate called Block, which is one of our proud sponsors for this event. The question that I have for you, and I think is sparking a lot of curiosity among our audience as well, is how did you come to adopt Bitcoin? Because you're here to promote Bitcoin adoption, and people want to hear from the pioneers, and they want to believe that they have the solutions that can help them really trust this payment system. So what's really led you to adopting Bitcoin?
What led me to Bitcoin?
Yeah. What led you to adopting Bitcoin yourself to start with?
Well, the only reason I'm here on this stage is because of open source. That's how I taught myself how to program when I was a kid, because of the grace of people giving their work away for free, doing things in the open, doing things publicly. And that was back in the day when I was a kid. It was around Linux, and the open source community was starting to thrive as the internet was getting more and more accessible to people, and there was a bunch of communities on an old system called Usenet. Some of you might be familiar with it, some of you may not, but it was a message board effectively, and it was fairly decentralized, just like IRC, Internet Relay Chat, was decentralized. And during the early days of the internet, there was a lot of really incredible open source sharing and energy, and also a lot of inherently decentralized energy through these older systems. And then we saw this wave of more and more things getting centralized behind the web, such as Google, and really centralizing the discovery problem. How do I find things? How do I find what I want to read about, what I want to understand? But in Usenet, there was a group called Alt Cypherpunks, which were a bunch of fans of cryptography and cryptographers and mathematicians, and the early days of PGP were chronicled there, and just a number of really radical acts and radical people. And the gem, the thing that everyone was searching for was money. How to not reinvent money, but put money back in the control of the people. And so I'd been following that and interested in it for quite some time as another way to learn and understand. And I was a punk when I was a kid, and I thought it was just the coolest, most righteous, noble pursuit. But it wasn't until 2008 when things really came together with Satoshi, and whoever that person is or the group of people are, took from so many ideas all over the internet to crystallize into this one moment, which became the white paper. And once I read it in that time, I was like, wow, this is it. This is incredible, because it is open, because it is provable, because it is transparent, because it is visible to everyone. And incredibly, whoever this person is has, kicked their ego to the side and given it to the world. And that, again, an act of grace that I saw early in the open source community, and want to continue to replicate and want to continue to push. So that's how I came to it. Square was starting at the same time as Bitcoin finally got going in 2009. There was a lot of financial energy because of the financial crisis in 2008. So there were a lot of companies that were starting at that time, including our own. And we, we watch it very closely. We tested something in 2014 where we gave sellers the ability to accept Bitcoin on their web pages. No one really used it. We didn't have sellers that people really wanted to spend their Bitcoin at that time. But in 2018, we saw another opportunity to, again, learn about Bitcoin and how it might change our industry and what that trend is, and we built it into Cash App as an exchange. It was a Hack Week project with me and Mike Brock, who's back there, who spoke yesterday. And our only goal was just to be able to convert Bitcoin instantly to buy a cup of coffee, and eventually that translated into the exchange product for a number of reasons. But that still is our goal. We're not in it to build an exchange. We're in it to help the internet realize a native currency, and therefore help the world realize a native currency. And when I say currency, as Jack said before, more of an open money transport, an open money protocol that we can all see, we can trust, that's not controlled by a government, that's not controlled by a corporation. The only reason our company, Square, exists is because we saw a problem in that Visa and MasterCard were not allowing small merchants onto their network. And we just said, we're going to figure out how to do that. So we're very familiar with companies, whether they be banks or networks like Visa and MasterCard, not enabling everyone and choosing through not wanting to put resources into it or deliberately, potentially in collaboration with various governments. We saw what happened in Nigeria and SARS, and how the Nigerian government went to various bank corps within to stop protesters receiving money, which Bitcoin made up for. So our whole reason for being as a company is solving the same problem that Bitcoin will ultimately solve for everyone in the world, in my belief.
Thank you, Jack. You say it so eloquently when you mention how the purpose of really making Bitcoin accessible to all, to solve a lot of the financial segregation that we witness across the world. Now, in the role that you occupy and the efforts that you have been leading, one of your initiatives has been to launch a trust fund named Beatrice to provide resources that are aimed at training African developers, especially the young people. Can you tell us a bit more about that initiative and how is the project going and what led you to initiating something like this?
Yeah. I guess over the past 10 years, I've been looking more and more at what the single points of failure of the systems we're working on are, and one single point of failure within the Bitcoin network and the community is that development is not as distributed as it needs to be. It's fairly concentrated in the United States, fairly concentrated in Europe. It's not found as much as we'd like it to be, or one would like it to be, in Central America and South America on the continent of Africa. So our goal, this was me and Jay-Z, who cares very deeply about empowerment of communities around the world. Our goal was to kind of try to help fix that single point of failure. How do we increase the potential for more developers around the world who can contribute to the Bitcoin network for the sole reason of making sure that it is truly owned by the people who need it the most? A lot of our approach in Bitcoin, maybe in the United States and Europe, some of it comes out of more desire than necessity, whereas you look at Central America, South America, and obviously Africa, it becomes out of more necessity. And necessity drives a greater urgency and a greater focus for development, we found. So our goal was to set aside 500 Bitcoin and put it into a trust that neither Jay or I control and we have no direction over, and to hire a board to eventually make grants wherever they thought were appropriate to, again, address that single point of failure of not having more developers around the world, especially those who operate out of necessity. So I think the entire board is here. Maybe the board can stand up. The Beatrice Trust board. So
we are very proud
of
all of your work.
So we're very fortunate to find some really incredible people, and they're running it now. So.
And we were really honored by the support Beatrice has given us for this African Bitcoin conference. Beatrice has been our biggest sponsor for this event. Thank you all. Jack, the one question that I have for you is, the goal is to vulgarize, Bitcoin. What do you see as the most pressing issues, especially for the global south or the continent of Africa, in terms of fastening that process? Because we are at the point where a lot of nations are facing a lot of pressure and crisis due to the ongoing geopolitical issues and the ongoing economic recession. And Bitcoin provides an opportunity for the most vulnerable people to find an alternative. But how do we make it accessible to them the fastest way possible?
You just said the word, which is accessibility. So like that's the problem we all want to solve. You've seen a number of companies either mentioned or presenting yesterday and today. What Jack announced this morning is a good opportunity. There's companies like Azteco that are doing things that are making it more and more accessible all around the world and making it easier where people actually are. So being more supportive of companies like these that are solving the accessibility issues, and we want to be helpful in any way we can as well. This is anything we can do to partner with entrepreneurs here on the continent, right. Latin America. We're down for it. We want to do it in a way that is scalable as well. Mm-hmm. A lot of our hopes and desires are going to be resting in what TBD is doing, right, to increase accessibility around the world. But that is, that's a goal. And we also want to make sure that we're doing it in a way that is consistent with the Bitcoin ethos, which is not something that we own. Everything we're doing with TBD is going to be open source. Anyone can utilize, anyone can fork, anyone can make it their own. Anyone can profit from if they have great ideas around. We of course need to build a business model around it as well, which we will figure out. But the initial push has to be consistent with what we love about Bitcoin, what makes Bitcoin unique and special, which is that openness, the fact that everyone can own it and can drive it in a direction that makes sense, as long as they can get the consensus from the rest of the network and the people that want to use it.
Thank you. I think there's a lot we have to learn from this whole community. When by that I mean the Bitcoin community, the fact that the initiator or the initiators themselves step aside to make this system and this technology available to all is commendable. And the way you are going about it, even with Beatrice, by allocating resources to help train a new generation of developers without really getting involved in the process, was instructing the people of the community on the continent to lead it, is also brilliant. So it leads to my next question. What efforts are you initiating at Block to promote more diversity in not only your businesses and your solution, but among the people you work with and your customer base? How do we ensure that the new investors that are providing and injecting resources in our markets in the Bitcoin space are cognizant of the fact that the nationals also need to have a role, and they need to be taken into consideration when it comes to their needs, and they need to obtain some form of protection as well from those companies?
I think the first step is just showing up and learning. We have a maybe all the block folks can raise their hand. We have a bunch of people here.
Block team.
To be where people are that we don't have an understanding of. We're in such a bubble in the United States. So getting out as much as we can. I don't live in the U.S. right now. Like I'm in Latin America, and I'm learning so much from that experience. And every opportunity I have like this, I came in 2019, spent a month on the continent in Nigeria, Ghana, and Ethiopia, and spent all that time with entrepreneurs and people who are building. And the Bitcoin community was back then was I don't think it was smaller, but it was less connected. Now this is incredible to see. So thank you again for putting this together, and thank you for everyone who made this happen. Because I know it's a lot of work to set this up, and I know you had to go through a lot and had to do a lot last minute to get this going, and I know people traveled from all around, but it's really important to see each other and to be present with each other and just bounce off ideas with one another. And the stronger the ties between the folks in this room and the people watching, the better and faster and more focused we're going to get ultimately. And hearing more voices of the actual needs and the problems is pretty incredible. And one of the things that I learned 3 years ago when I came to the continent is just how big an issue and a gap the remittance problem is, and how well Bitcoin solves that problem. And if there was one use case to solve for and make incredibly efficient and incredibly empowering, it would be the remittance problem, in my view. And it's an easy way to explain Bitcoin from a use case, from a customer perspective to people that is so far detached from what we hear in the United States and a lot in Europe about the price and the digital gold and all this BS, which is not really solving anyone's real problem. So the real problem is sending money and the money transmission. And that, if we can just focus the conversation more and more on that, and then sequence, and then the next thing, and the next thing, and it grows and grows and iterates. But we need to start with something a little bit smaller that people can like really tangibly feel, and you feel it on this continent. You feel it in South America and Central America.
Amazing. A couple of weeks ago, Block and the Human Rights Foundation actually hosted a joint event to discuss Bitcoin and human rights. And interestingly, today I am the one interviewing Jack, but a couple of weeks back, Jack was the one interviewing me. I woke up that morning with laryngitis, and I was completely inaudible. And I'm like, no matter what happens, I don't care how this voice comes back, but I'm not missing this interview with Jack. I spent like 2 hours gargling with salt and water, and eventually I managed to have a voice audible enough to have a conversation.
You were excellent. Thank you for doing that.
But the question that I had... Thank you. The question that I have for you, Jack, is how important is it to see Bitcoin contribute to fighting oppression? A lot of the activists that took part in that event are here today, and I want to thank them so much for flying from all over the world to join us. And I would like to also give a prop to the Human Rights Foundation that has been very supportive in this process. But my question to you is, how is Block positioning itself to support activists that are at the front of fighting for social justice, and how important is it for you to see Bitcoin serve that community?
One of the reasons we did that, and thank you, Alex and the HRF for setting that up. We are kind of solving our own problem, and often when you solve your own problem, you're solving other people's problem as well. One of the problems we have in our company is that not everyone, like, again, we're in this bubble in the United States, so people in our company see Bitcoin as like this digital gold thing and price. So we have a lot of people in the company that are against us working on Bitcoin for a variety of reasons. And I appreciate that, because it always helps make our answer much stronger. But one of the things we want to do is show, like, there are use cases here today that people are using Bitcoin for today that are extremely important, that show off and showcase the best of humanity. And if our purpose is economic empowerment, why are we not listening to these people, and why are we not bringing them up on stage to tell us about what they're going through and why they found this and why it's important to them? And in conversations with Alex and others, we determined that this shouldn't just be for our company as an audience, it should be for whoever wants to see it. So that's why we produce it. But to your point, like, when you focus on the concept of building for necessity, then, I mean, there's no greater than an activist. There's no greater class of folks who can demonstrate a real need, and a need in such a focused way that you can identify a problem and a series of technologies and interfaces that can actually help solve that problem. So again, we don't want to approach every single problem with the Bitcoin hammer. We want to look at the problems that people are having and figure out if Bitcoin potentially solves it in a differentiated way. And often that answer is yes, it does. But the amazing thing about a number of activists we've intersected with is that they bring the Bitcoin use case to us in the conversation. It's not us saying, well, have you tried Bitcoin? It's like they're talking about the usefulness of it, which is incredible and certainly different from my experience of the conversation 5 years ago. So I think the word is getting out, and it's getting out because people are showing how they use it, not telling people. They're not telling people about the virtues of Bitcoin, they're showing people. And that is the best way to spread anything, is like tangibly make people feel it. And activists are a big part of enabling that, because you connect with their story, because you connect at a human level because of their fight, and you see the soul of what they're trying to do, and you can't help but feel their struggle. And if they're bringing this tool in front of you, saying, this solved my struggle, I don't care what it is, this solved it, yeah, that wins
And
everything.
a lot of those activists, we have some of those incredible activists in the room, and their session is coming in a couple of minutes or hours. Alex Glasson from Human Rights Foundation will be hosting them, and we really want you to be there to witness the incredible work they have been doing from Venezuela, Afghanistan, Eritrea, and many other countries where citizens and activists are using Bitcoin to fight against authoritarianism and oppressive systems. And whatever activists are, the beauty of being an activist is that government don't like you. We are used to it. However, we have seen a lot of governments taking tougher regulations against Bitcoin. How do you see us going around that? How do we really get to a point where we have friendlier governments that understand why Bitcoin matters, not only for the citizens and the masses, but sometimes even to support their economic growth, which is good for their faith, how do I even say it? I'm losing my word again. Which is good for their image. How do we convince governments that Bitcoin is important for the citizens and even for themselves? That's the summary of the question.
Well, we don't want to give them a playbook on stage here, so
Definitely
the government
not.
that is. But I would say, like, eventually the scales tip. Like, eventually the scales tip in the favor of the people because of real usage, because of and one of the amazing things about Bitcoin is it is so resilient to everything. It's certainly resilient to corporations. It's certainly resilient to governments. It's proven to be resilient to the combination of the two. And if we focus on building it and making it more accessible to more people, at some point it can't be stopped right now, but it further can't be stopped. And it further can't be stopped from reaching more and more and more people. So going back to the work and focusing on that accessibility, focusing on the use case, making it easy for everyone in the world, or as many people as possible, to utilize it solves some of the problems. And one of the other things I learned when I came here in 2019, I didn't meet anyone in the government, I didn't meet anyone in media. My focus was only on entrepreneurs and students. And what was incredible was how deep the knowledge of the government corruption here is,
Right.
and how great the understanding of what is actually happening behind the scenes. And with that knowledge, taking that energy and building. Because again, it's out of necessity. Necessity focuses everything. And it's not necessarily against the government, although in some cases it is. It's like, how do we work around this thing? How do we go around the pothole, as the internet has proven to do time and time again? So I saw a lot of that early internet ethos in the conversations I was having with the people who were getting into Bitcoin or working in Bitcoin. So I have a lot of confidence, and that's why I'm watching so closely everything happening in Africa, everything happening in Central and South America, is because these continents and these people on these continents will lead the way in terms of holding these governments to accord by building products that people can use. And just the usage, more and more mass adoption, will, in my belief, take away all the oxygen from what a government can do to the negative around the people. And I believe that, but it comes back to, like, so what do? We build. They can't stop us then, and that's what's important.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we only have a few minutes left, but before we go, Jack, the one question that I have for you, since you're in Africa and a lot of people are interested in knowing what are your plans for this continent, can you please tell us what projects you're working on right now? You mentioned TBD previously, that can support growth on the continent, and tell us a bit more about how it is going and what we should be expecting from Block in terms of the Bitcoin ecosystem emerging on the continent.
Yeah, I mean, right now we're still in our learning mode and having conversations. I think in 2019 I said that I wanted to live here for some time, at least 6 months. That I still plan to do that. COVID kind of got in the way, but
hopefully next year.
Yeah, hopefully very soon. But we're putting a lot of our focus in TBD. We're building this open wallet hardware project, which we think will be hugely beneficial to people around the world, and we look forward to partnering with a number of companies here on the continent to again make it easier to onboard people into Bitcoin and then get them to do a self-custody. And we're working on a hardware miner to make it a lot more, hopefully, accessible and more efficient for people around the world, especially on the continent, to participate in securing the network and making it even more and more resilient in the form of something that's also useful for other things, not just mining. So we're trying to do a lot, but the reason we're here is to have as many conversations as possible and learn how we can help. We come into this with a mindset of partnership. We don't want to compete. We see too many Western companies come into this market and markets around the world and just look at competition instead of partnership. So we want to start with partnership, and there's tons of opportunity around that, and it's going to better our company, make our company stronger, and hopefully make the entire ecosystem and all the companies we meet stronger as well. We're not going to be able to partner with everyone, but one of the things that we want to do is make sure that we have the right APIs, the right platforms, and the right policies to enable a significant increase in the economy here around the Bitcoin network and around giving people simple tools to move money around in a way that is not blocked by governments and corporations, and we can truly see some incredible activity that really helps humans all over.
Thank you so much, Jack. It was great hosting you, and we look forward to having you again next year, hopefully.
Thank you all. Thank you.